right. What's up, guys? My name is Olivia Park, and I am a women's health and performance coach. And I'm here with my friend Gillian, who is a nutrition coach living in Spain, in Barcelona, but she is from California. So we're just going to have a conversation today to talk about how things are in Spain, to give another perspective for how people are dealing with fitness and nutrition and being at home and training at home and mindset, and what is available to them in different parts of the world. So Gillian, do you just want to tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so my name is Gillian. As Olivia said, I live in Barcelona, but I'm from California. So I am a nutrition and lifestyle coach out here. I add lifestyle on there because a lot of the time I like to say that I help people sort of remove obstacles from their lives. And so a lot of the time that obstacle is based on nutrition, or they come to me because that obstacle is nutrition. But we definitely delve into like other parts of their lives. So I work with a variety of different clients. It's definitely a mix of men and women. I think, a lot of the time women tend to be the ones that we think that that's where, dieting and diet culture and like issues with weight loss or body composition. But surprisingly, I have a lot of men that I work with as well that sort of have similar issues. And so it's been really interesting to sort of grow the business and work with both of those. And there's a really strong food culture in Spain. And so working sort of with food culture has been a really fascinating experience for me because my background is actually anthropology. So I did my degree in anthropology a long, long time ago. So yeah.
Yeah, awesome. I totally hear what you're saying about lifestyle. I completely agree. That's something that I work with a lot of my clients as well. All of my clients. That it's like everything that's going on in your life out of the gym and life out of food, and it's all kind of encompassing. But those lifestyle things are so important for creating change with food and with exercise as well. So I completely agree. I just want to touch on what you said about food culture in Spain. Now, this is something that I experience as well, like living in Taiwan, where I lived there for 5 years, and people don't cook in Taiwan. People do not cook, and a lot of people don't even have kitchens. So that was something that I came up against a lot. And so as a coach, really having to pivot a lot to meet them where they're at culturally, with food, and trying to, people that are wanting to make changes with their health, body composition or whatever, and how to kind of work with that, the food culture in Taiwan. So I'm really curious about how that works for you in Spain.
Yeah, so it's interesting here in Spain. So I'm in Catalonia, which is one of the autonomous regions in Spain. And so the food culture here is like everybody thinks like, oh, Mediterranean food, like so healthy.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yes, but
Yeah.
because yes, they're like if you eat in sort of like a very traditional like home lifestyle, like your mom is probably going to be cooking like some fish. You'll have vegetables on the table, but there's a ton of bread. A ton of cured meats. And there's just a culture of like essentially swimming in olive oil. And so there's all of these things that people have sort of set in their minds. For example, like certain foods can only be eaten at certain times. So like I remember suggesting to a client early on being like, hey, why don't you try eating, like a veggie scramble for breakfast? And they're like, oh, I can't do that. And I was like, how come? You make yourself a breakfast every morning. They're like, oh, I can't eat vegetables for breakfast. You just don't do that. And so it's a lot of, it's a lot of breaking these sort of preconceived notions about like what can be eaten when, on helping really fix food ratios, because I think here, people would easily just live on bread and olive oil and completely forget about anything else. And then when people try to lose weight here, it's usually based on it's like based around the bread. So when people try to gain weight, they eat more bread. When people try to lose weight, they eat less bread, which is fine, but they categorize the like carbohydrates as the demon here. And so, for example, probably the the myth that I come up across the most is like, I can't eat carbs at night. And I think that that one is probably like an international thing, but here it's like, I can't eat carbs at night. It's like, okay, how come? And that is just, it's ingrained in the culture that if you want to reach a certain body composition, like you can't eat carbs at night. It's very strange. Anyways, so that's sort of one of the many things that we work on, and sort of just teaching that, you know, a meal is a meal. It doesn't necessarily matter when that meal is. And also sort of working on like disassociating people from like their need for bread, and having bread be something as like, bread is fine, but you don't need bread with every single meal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's quite interesting, isn't it? I mean, that sort of dichotomy, it's like, you know, for people there, it's like, okay, bread is really, really bad, and bread is the cause of my problem, that I need to stop eating bread. But it is such an integral part of food and culture there. And so it's kind of like this, and I saw the same thing in Taiwan, right? It's like, I need to stop eating so much rice. I eat too much rice, but then rice is like so part of the culture, and without it, it feels weird, right?
Yeah, I think what happens a lot here too is like, then there's the other ones that are like, oh well, I'm not going to stop eating bread, but I'm going to stop eating all other carbs. And I'm like, you're not going to eat potatoes, but like you'll eat bread? I don't get it. Yeah, and so I think it's one of those things where it's like that. I see it as a control thing, whereas it's like they, you know, they can sort of see this like bright red like flag of like, okay, well, this is something that I have a lot in my life. So, well, maybe if I control that and I remove that, then everything's going to change, because everybody, I mean, you know this, everybody's looking for that magic button. Everything's looking for like that magic thing that's going to change them. And I think now, you know, especially a lot of people are like on the vegan train. And so they think like, well, if I become vegan, I'll be saved. Or like, if I stop eating meat, I'll be saved. Or like, and it's like, unfortunately, it's never that simple.
Yeah,
So,
totally. I totally hear you. So sort of on that, Gillian, we could have talked about this before we started recording, but we were going to go into it. But you are from the States and you live in Spain, and you speak Spanish and English, obviously. So a lot of your content is in Spanish and English. So I'm really curious about how you kind of manage that, and how you manage your business with both languages, and sort of speaking to both um languages.
yeah,
Yeah.
so it's actually it's complicated, because the fact of the matter is that most of my following is Spanish speaking.
Yeah.
However, I do have like a very small group of like only English speakers. And so I've played with it over the years. Like I started out only doing Spanish, and then I realized that that wasn't where like I would love to increase my English client base, just because as a native English speaker, my Spanish is amazing, but I do express myself better in English. And also because my business is online, you know, I can work with anyone. I have, you know, I have a client in China, I have a client in the UK, I have clients, you know, in different parts of the world. Um, and so I want to make sure that I'm open to all of those, you know, they're those, I guess not all, but those two different markets. And so essentially when it comes to content, it's actually really frustrating, but I do it anyways, is I'll write my content in English and then I'll translate it into Spanish. And I've gotten used to it. That doesn't mean that I like doing it. I do it because I know that I want to serve those two communities, like the English speaking community and the Spanish speaking community, because the fact of the matter, and you know, in Taiwan, like speaking Taiwanese is a lot harder than learning Spanish. But there's still a very large community of people here that live here and don't speak Spanish. So just kind of wanting to make sure that I touch like those communities. And then also providing information, because I still do have a following in the States, and making sure that, you know, they're able to access the content as well. And so now even like I'm sending out a weekly email, and I decided that I was going to do that weekly email in English and in Spanish. And that, you know, is like double the work, but it's one of those things that it's like, if I genuinely want to help people and want to help greatest amount of people that I am able to help, then I need to do it in 2 languages.
Yeah. Makes it hard when an Instagram post is 2,200 characters, right?
Mm-hmm. I have it.
Yeah.
I get like flow. I like put on music and I get in a flow and like it just, I guess I've just gotten used to it.
Yeah, totally. Being very specific with what you're saying, no fluffing with your words, I
Yeah.
suppose. Yeah.
Although I read your captions sometimes, I'm like, this girl is just, she's like, God, I love her. And then I'm like, I would hate to have to translate that.
So Gillian, you guys in Spain have been in like lockdown for 4 weeks now, is it? 4 or 5 weeks?
Going on. So it is just over 4 weeks.
Wow.
And we have 10 days left. 10 days left. Let's
Okay.
cross your fingers for me.
Yeah. So is there conversation about that lockdown being lifted, or is it kind of like a reassessment sort of a couple of days before?
I have no idea, to be honest, because when you turn on the news or when you read the news, it's literally the same thing over and over, which is we have coronavirus. We're like, yes, we know that.
And we don't know
We're
what
good.
else to do, but we know this is true.
Yeah, and then they're like, lots of people are sick, and then lots of people died. And we're like, yes, we also know that. Can you like it's not, I mean, it sucks, obviously, for the people that aren't safe in their homes with beautiful light coming through the window, but it's one of those things that like I'm trying to take it day by day, because we like a lot of places in the world you can, well, not a lot, but some places in the world you can go out and exercise outside or go for a run or go for a hike. But like we're in the city. So if everybody's out going for a run, there's like not a distancing. And also Spanish, I think the reason that Spain and Italy have been hit really hard with the virus is because we're very touchy. Like everyone's touching each other all the time and breathing on each other, and everybody's a close talker. And so it's like, so yeah, I think, I mean, it's been tough. It's been a roller coaster of emotion, I think, for everyone. And as someone that like, I'm supposed to be this like ray of light and like ray of sunshine, and like but also one of the things that I pride myself on is like I'm honest. And so I've sent emails to people, like to my email list, being like, hey guys, like just want to let you know, like today I feel terrible, and it's okay to feel terrible, and it's okay to like not want to do anything, but just remember that like it's just today, like tomorrow is going to be better. And so I think just trying to like make sure that I'm giving out this like it's hope, even if it's like a bit bleak in a way, where it's like, hey, like maybe today you feel like crap, just work on getting yourself out of the hole. Because I think the issue is when you're in the hole and you're not trying to get out of it. I think that's when the problem starts.
Yeah, I think it's been a really it's been really hard, because the internet is, there's a very broad spectrum, and the internet on one side is saying rest, don't do anything, chill, eat the ice cream, don't exercise, like it's okay to rest and do nothing.
Yeah.
And that's okay. But then the other side of the spectrum is saying, write a book, do all the workouts. This is your chance to set up healthy habits to help yourself when you come out of this like quarantine or whatever. And so it's this really like hard place to be, because the internet is saying one thing and then another thing, and we as humans are fluctuating and modulating between these two things as well. But it's no different to any other time in life, right? I mean, we're constantly in this like balancing act of trying to find like homeostasis in our lives, like every single day when we're in normal life anyway, right? So I think it's been really interesting that the fitness industry and the and like diet culture, it's still the same old stuff. It's still the same old stuff of black and white. Do this, don't do that. If you don't do this, there's shame. If you do this, there's shame, and we can't quite get it right, and using diet culture and using fitness as a way to, as a means to an ends. you know, just like in real life, you know, wanting to find happiness or whatever. It's like, okay, we look to exercise and we look to food to make changes in our body that we think is going to lead us to happiness, you know.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with this. It's like there's this crazy virus, this pandemic, and still it's like fitness and food seem to be the answer to getting through this virus, which is so crazy. Does that make sense
Yeah.
to you?
Yeah, I think I totally know what you mean, where I feel like it's like I love seeing, other professionals on the internet, and there's some that I absolutely adore. And then there's some where I'm like, okay, yeah, that's fine if you want to like eat some ice cream, but like don't, but for me, it's like what I just said right now, like you got to work on getting yourself out of the hole.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, like I've been baking up a storm, which is awesome. But the thing is that I've also been working on my body image issues and my mental stuff, so that when I bake that, I'm not eating the whole thing in one sitting. I'm baking it, I'm enjoying it, and I'm, stretching it out, sharing it with my roommates. Like, and so I think you can do both. And I
Yeah.
think it's one of those things that, as you said, diet culture and fitness always wants to be black and white. And so like, it wants to say like, either you do it or you don't. And what I work on with my clients always is like, there is no black and white. There is no good and bad. It's all a range. And so you're not on, you're not off, you're somewhere in the range always. And so some days you're going to be more towards one end of the range, and some days you're going to be more towards the other end of the range. And I think what's happening right now in this time is we have so much time. And so we've been given this gift of time. And the problem with the gift of time is that, we can think a lot, we can do a lot, or we can not do a lot. And so I think that it sort of comes down, the way I see it is like, okay, who do you want to be in the world? And like, that doesn't change just because you're stuck at home. It's just the means to that end of who you want to be in the world may change a little bit. And so I think you probably would be in agreement with this, because like, I think we tend to like think similarly on this kind of stuff. And so, with my clients, for example, it's not, hey, like, yeah, no problem, go like eat a bunch of ice cream. It's like, okay, so you want to eat ice cream, let's explore that. And let's figure out, let's like go eat the ice cream, but also let's figure out like, what is the drive behind this? And if it's just like, no, I felt like eating ice cream and I'm going to move on with my life, when awesome, then you have learned what I have taught you, because that's what it should be like. But if it's like, no, I'm eating this ice cream because like things are overwhelming, then it's like, okay, well, we need to look at what's overwhelming and why that comes to ice cream, and not to, sitting down and talking to your partner. So
yeah, 100%. I agree with everything that you are saying. And it really is this time where we are at home and up against those things, especially food, that I think most people are sort of battling with. I mean, we're either not eating because, the people are not eating because they're stressed out, or, eating to deal with the stress that is actually happening. And so it's a beautiful opportunity to allow yourself to have that permission, but then get curious about what comes up for you once you give yourself permission that you can do whatever you want. And I think that is the magic, when we give ourselves permission, it's like, okay, cool, I'm going to let myself, but I don't trust myself. So how am I going to deal with this? Right.
Yeah. And I think a big thing that I've been working on with people, and I've done a couple webinars. I did a couple webinars in Spanish, and then I did this one in English as well, was just working on people to like understand, like, what does it mean to be actually hungry?
Yeah, totally.
Because that's something where it's like, especially here, like part of the food culture is like, there's certain times to eat, like you don't eat outside of like the certain set times. And so working on people being like, cool, like I get that that's the time that you're supposed to eat, but are you hungry? Like, ask yourself, like, you can go look in the fridge, like go open the fridge and stare at it, but I want you to ask yourself, like, am I physically hungry? And what is it that I actually need right now?
Totally.
And look at those two things and be like, hey, like maybe you're aware of the fact that you're eating for an emotional reason, but the fact that you're aware of it and not just doing it is the first step to understanding how to get to the bottom of it.
Totally. Yeah. I couldn't agree more. I think that's something that I have a lot of conversations with my clients about as well. That, you know, becoming a mindful eater, and I think that we can, and that's kind of going around a lot right now, right? You know, mindful eating. This is a time to practice that and sort of come inward and do all of this work. And becoming a mindful eater or mindful in your life with whatever it is isn't a thing that you just suddenly become. It's a constant practice. And I think that that word practice is something that I use always when I'm talking about mindfulness, because being mindful is just the practice of being mindful each thing that you're doing, right? So each time you go to have something to eat, you can eat the ice cream, you can eat a vegetable, you can eat whatever the heck you want to eat, but are you considering and reflecting first on how you're actually feeling? And if you're like, I'm not hungry, I'm still going to eat this thing, and you eat the thing, cool, like that's fine. But you practiced mindfulness before, right? By reflecting. Would you agree?
Exactly. Yeah, I think it just comes down to being present and being curious about what's happening with you. Where I think that a lot of the time, instead of being curious, we pass judgment. And so it's like, well, I'm bad because I eat chocolate. Or like, for example, me yesterday. So I pretty much always have chocolate, but chocolate is like, it's become that thing that like I don't really care about that much.
Yeah.
Whereas like I remember years ago, like if I had a bar of chocolate, it was like the whole thing would disappear.
Yeah.
And now it's like I've had a bar of chocolate here for I don't know, and I think I've eaten like 2 or 3 squares. And yesterday I was like, oh, I really feel like chocolate. And I had like 2 squares, and I was like, this is interesting. I was like, I wonder what's going on, because that's a very small amount, but for me it was like more than I usually have. And I was like, I wonder what's going on. And I just sort of like got curious about it. I had it. I was like, oh, that was delicious. And then moved on with my life.
Yeah.
And that's something that, I mean, for me, and I think that a lot of people see us as coaches and they're like, oh, but you guys have this figured out. And it's like, no, we're still practicing everything. And that's why we can share this, is because we're in the experience of being curious about this stuff. And the reason why I think we're effective at what we do is not because like we've, read the right books. It's because we've had the experience. And then we still work through that experience on a continuous basis. I mean, at least for me, I can speak to that. And I think you posted something the other day that you were like, peanut butter is like one of your trigger foods. And then I saw you like froze it in little, and I was like, that's a really good idea. And it was great, because I was like, yes, I love it when other people share these things, because none of us are perfect. And like what you said, it's always a practice. And like practice kind of never really makes perfect. It just makes it less hard.
Yeah, I love that. Absolutely. Practice never makes it perfect. It just makes it less hard. That is beautiful. I love that. Yeah. So Gillian, tell me about how you are managing with your clients that are in Spain right now and in this lockdown situation. It's quite different around different places in the world. Like I'm in New Zealand at the moment, but I usually live in South Korea now. But I've been here for about 5 or 6 weeks now. And in New Zealand, we're pretty lucky. There's a lot of open space. We can go out walking to a park. We can just sort of be outside. That's okay. But all essential services are shut down. So we can only go to the supermarket. Like there's no other food places that are delivering or open or anything. And I know that some places in the States, they still have like food places operating and stuff like that. So what's it like in Spain? And what are maybe the 3 biggest obstacles that your clients that you've found are kind of coming up against? And how have you been working through those with them?
Yeah. So I mean, here we have, so you can get delivery, but grocery stores are like pretty much the only thing that's open. Grocery stores and pharmacies. Grocery stores tend to have, as far as like what they have, like they're pretty well stocked. There's like maybe a couple things that are missing, but in general, you can get pretty much everything you need. Definitely, I would say what's been most affected has been people's sort of like exercise routines. as far as food goes, it's actually been a really great opportunity for me to like inspire my clients to cook more,
Yeah.
and explore a little bit more about like what they like to eat, and also to inspire them to really take the time to like eat their meals slowly, taste what they're eating, and start exploring some of that mindfulness stuff that we just talked about,
Mm.
because they sort of have the time now. Um, and I've seen some really good success with my clients. I've been working, a couple of my clients, we shifted to working a bit more on like sleep and stress,
Mm.
and that went really well. I have a client that's a police officer, and so he does shift work, and so we were working on a sleep routine for him, and that went really really well. And I would say in general, everybody's been really they've been really flexible as far as like what they're willing to deal with themselves. So that's been really really cool. And I would just say a lot of them, like I have a client who this week she was kind of upset because she's like, I feel like I put in so much work, and I noticed like last week I got takeout a couple times, and I'm not able to exercise. She actually just recovered from coronavirus.
Oh, wow.
um yeah, but she's healthy, she's like robust. And so like she's like basically just sucked because I couldn't smell anything. um but she was, in general, she's recovered, and so she was kind of coming to these realizations where she's like, I feel like I'm taking a step back. And the amazing thing was, because of the work that we've done, she was so aware of what was going on that she sort of like talked herself through it, and I just sort of like led her kind of down the path and was like, cool, so this is what you feel like is going on, what are the steps that we're going to take this week to sort of work on that. And so that was a really really cool process.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, I think as far as my other clients go, it's a lot of the stress. And so like stress eating has been a big thing. And so just working on awareness and working on specific exercises they at the end of the day can be like, I was successful with this, I was not successful with this. Because I really like leaving that sort of like black and white. As much as I go away from black and whites, I like for someone to at the end of the day be like, I was successful, I was not successful. And making it so easy for them to feel successful that they continue that motivation. And so yeah, it's been good. It's been good actually. I've shifted. I mean, I was already all online, but I've started doing a lot more webinars. And I launched a 21-day program that is basically a condensed version of a 6-week program, and offer that for free, because I was basically like, look, we're going through a lot of stuff right now. People are uncertain as to their jobs or income or whatever. I'm going to give you this. I'm going to give this to you guys. If you want to contribute, awesome. If you don't want to contribute, that's totally fine.
Mm.
So I think, that's kind of been where it's at, as
Yeah.
far as like.
Awesome. And how about you as an individual? So, it's an interesting thing to be a coach. I know that this is something that I've come up against, is really, holding space for a lot of people and not doing that for myself. And I know that a couple of weeks ago, I actually had a little bit of a breakdown, where my energy reserves were just completely exhausted, and I needed to just take some time for myself to actually process everything that's going on and grieve for what's going on and stuff like that as well. So how about you as an individual? I mean, how are you dealing with this? It's been 5 weeks,
Yeah.
over 4 weeks, of being in this situation. You're with housemates there. So
Mhm.
how are you feeling, and how are you managing your nutrition and your training?
Yeah. So I would say, I like, even coaches need coaches. So I have a business coach
Yeah.
that is like she's maybe like she's 10 or 15 years older than me. And she's this powerful, like intense woman that is just like a badass. And so she basically like whipped me into shape. She was like, get your shit together.
Yep.
You cannot, like, she's all about like reinventing yourself and innovating. And so she definitely gave me, kind of like lit a fire under my ass to like get my shit together and like start, doing the podcast again, and a YouTube channel, and like working on my marketing and social media and all of that. But I definitely have had a couple days where I'm like, I feel useless. Like I feel like a useless individual.
Mm.
Like I don't feel like I'm giving things to other people. Like I feel like everything, you know, those like when your imposter syndrome all of a sudden starts bubbling up, it's like you're an idiot.
Yeah.
Um, and like as someone that, you know, I dedicate my life to helping other people, it's hard to ask for help sometimes. And so that's been something I've been really actively working on, and I think that that's been really helpful, is I know that it's something I need to work on. And so I've been like conscious of, hey, friend or person in my life or roommate, I need this from you right now. I don't feel myself, like, and so that's been great. As far as training and nutrition, I have been eating sort of like more mindfully, more intuitively for the last few months, and really working on like stepping away from macro tracking completely. And so I've sort of condensed my meals into 3 meals a day, no snacks. Um, and my breakfast is usually, it's been the same for forever. It's eggs and veggies and some type of carb. Lunch is usually, I've been making big, like giant pots of stew that actually, well, the recipe's on my Instagram, giant pots of stew that has like chicken, veggies, olive oil. And then I just add like an extra fat on there. And then, so like a little bit, maybe a little lower carb at lunch and a little higher fat. And then, you know, lots of fruit. I eat fruit as my like dessert for almost every meal. And then dinner has kind of been like whatever I feel like, which I usually like, I get people like, oh, whatever I feel like, pizza, whatever I feel like tends to be vegetables and protein, just because that's what I know makes me feel good.
Yeah.
And so that's what that's been training. I follow a program that I pay for. It's just like a generic, like physique type program. I have a couple dumbbells, I have a kettlebell, and I'm also really creative. So like, oh, and I have a TRX. And so like, obviously having trained people for so many years, like I can see an exercise and be like, okay, I don't have a barbell, but I can do it this way. Or like, I know what muscle group I'm supposed to be working. So this is the exercise that I'm going to sub it for. And I try to keep the same routine every single day.
Yeah.
And so even if I'm not training that day, like I'll make sure that that time is set aside for like yoga or stretching or something active. I've been, you know, loading up a backpack with a dumbbell and just pacing on my terrace, which sounds insane, but it's been really, really helpful. And so, yeah, my training and nutrition is just like nutrition. I'm definitely eating a bit less than normal, even though I'm like baking more. But I think the key for me has not been like, I haven't tracked anything, which has been key, because I've just been focusing on like, am I hungry? What do I want? What do I need? And is this satisfying? And that's, so far, it's been going really well. Although tomorrow's my birthday, so that's kind of sad.
Awesome though.
I mean, it's awesome. It's like, I'm a very physical person. Like my love language is touch, and well, touch and quality time. And so like, I'm just like, I just need a hug from someone that isn't my roommate.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Totally. So what are you planning to do for your birthday?
I'm going to make myself some delicious chocolate chip cookies. I'm craving some like chewy chocolate chip cookies, and like, knowing me is like, I'll make them and then I'll be like, what am I going to do with all these cookies?
Yeah. You're going to have one, you're like, okay, cool. Like, that was good.
No, I'll have like 3 or 4. Okay.
That's awesome, Gillian. Yeah.
I'm not going to pretend that like I'm that person that is like, oh, well, I'll just have one cookie. No, I will eat the cookie dough, and then I'll have 3 or 4, and then I'll probably feel a little bit sick, and I'll be like, oh, I knew this was going to happen. And then I'll be like, and then I'll freeze a bunch of them, and then I'll pull them out one by one over the next couple of weeks. So yeah, all you people out there that want to know my secret.
And actually, that's a really good idea. You know, if you are doing baking, right, to freeze. To freeze.
I always freeze.
Just keep a few things out and then just freeze the rest, and then take them out as you know, if you want for the week, if you want to bring out maybe like 4 cookies and then be something for the week. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I freeze. And that's something that I used to do years ago. I had like a recipe blog that was, the photos were terrible. And the probably wasn't that great either. And that's what I would do, is like, I would bake, you know, I'd bake a ton. I'd take some to whoever I worked with at the time, and then I would always freeze a few.
Yeah.
And that honestly, for me, it's not necessarily so much so I won't eat it. It's more just because like in a week, I know I'm going to want a cookie. And so like I need to freeze it.
Yeah, totally. But I think that's a really good idea for a lot of people who are, if we're thinking about sort of nutrition and finding things a little bit hard with food at home right now, I think that's quite like what I did with the peanut butter, right? Putting the peanut butter in
Yeah.
the ice tray. Although that didn't, in the end, it has to be that, because I'm with my mum and dad in New Zealand, and I had to say to mum, take the peanut butter away, take it away.
Yeah.
It's just
I
not
think
working for me right now.
out of sight, out of mind is
Yep.
actually, so that's something that I work on in the first week of this nutrition program the like 21 day one. So the
Yeah.
very first week is all about like out of sight, out of mind. And it's like, look, if you have a certain trigger food, like, and you're not ready to work on like the root of the issue, like just get it out of the house.
Yeah.
And people are like, yeah, but my kids need to eat cookies. I'm like, your kids don't need to eat cookies. Like, let's be realistic here. Like your children are going to eat what you give them.
Mm,
Like, yeah, maybe they'll whine about it, but like in the end, like if kids are hungry, they'll eat. So like if you don't want to eat cookies and your excuse is that you have cookies because your kids need to eat them, like I'm calling bullshit.
yeah, totally. Yeah. And that's really hard. I think that those kind of conversations are really hard because we don't want to be enticing shame, and we kind of want to leave shame out of it. But then we do need to draw a hard line sometimes if there are things that we want to achieve and, goals and things like that. It's like, okay, how do we find this line between you're a human, you can do whatever you want, and you're allowed to have whatever you want or whatever, but then also you need to do this to get to here. I think that that's quite a hard sort of thing sometimes. And I think that that's got a lot to do with kind of personalities and stuff like that. Like
the moderator,
abstainers. Oh, did you just say moderators? And
yeah.
Oh my God, we actually did that at the same time. That is so weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's kind of, it's a hard line, isn't it? It's like, and I think that diet culture feeds into a lot of that. If you're kind of aware of diet culture like you are, and you obviously talk a lot about that with your clients as well, is that trying to appease that you can have whatever you want. No food is bad, but then if you can't stop eating the thing, and like you said, you're not actually ready to look at why that's actually happening, then you have to get rid of it in order to actually have some success, to have motivation to progress forward.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's that, but then also I struggle a little bit with that with my clients, because then it's like, okay, at some point this thing is going to come up.
Yeah.
And so what I try to work with them a lot on is just understanding, like, look, if you trust yourself and you give yourself the permission to maybe eat the entire bag of potato chips in one sitting, like I promise you're going to get sick of it.
Yeah.
Like you're going to do that maybe once or twice, and then you're going to get sick of it. So that's actually something with clients that are ready. I've done like a sort of desensitization practice with them where it's like I have one client in particular where she was like, if there's a bag of potato chips, like I just can't stop. And then she would make these deals with herself that like, oh, well, now I won't eat dinner, or like tomorrow I'm going to be perfect. And it's like always that, it's the diet culture thing where it's like, well, tomorrow is different, or Monday is the diet starts. And I was like, look, I want you to buy your absolute favorite package of potato chips, and I want you to always have it at home. And I want you to allow yourself to have them. And I'm just going to warn you, I know that the first couple of times you may eat the whole bag of chips. And I know for her, I was lucky that she wasn't so focused on weight loss, because someone that's focused on weight loss, that like does their head in.
Yeah.
She was like, okay. And I was like, look, in the short term, this is what might happen. But in the long term, you're going to find that because you have them all the time, they're no longer special, which is like, some people are like, oh, that sucks, they're no longer special. It's like, no, but you can appreciate them for what they are, instead of like the potato chips having this like hold over you. And that's something, I mean, that's something that I've done with myself. I used to be an abstainer totally. And now I would say I'm definitely more along the moderator side.
Mm,
And a lot of that also had to do with also retraining your taste buds, especially if you're someone that comes off of like the normal diet of like a lot of processed food, like a lot of like very strong flavors, especially like fat and sugar and salt. You know, training yourself to like healthy food
mm,
is so beneficial, because now for me, when I think of like, oh, I really want dessert, I think of like, oh, I really want an apple.
mm,
And like people are like, what is wrong with you? And I'm like, no, that's genuinely like when I finish a meal and I'm like, I want dessert, that is genuinely what I crave.
mm,
And this isn't me being like a crazy diet person. This is just like I'm respecting what I feel like eating.
mm,
But that is because I've been able over many years develop the connection between like, hey, this food makes my body feel good and this food tastes good.
mm.
And I think that that's sort of like the where, you know, where people are trying to get is like finding that balance.
Yeah, totally. I actually said this to I, like you, have coaches in my life, and I have three coaches, and one of them is a nutrition coach. And I actually said to her the other day that when I have things that don't, like the peanut butter thing, right? It's something that kind of doesn't make me feel that great. And I actually don't really enjoy it that much. It's more the texture of it. But you know, if I have too much, and that is not if I have too much, I'm going to get fat. You know, it's not that kind of thing. It's if I have too much and I don't feel good because it doesn't make me feel good,
Mhm.
then, you know, in the past when I was obsessed with exercise and food and using it to change my body, then I would have thought only about how that food is going to change my body. But
Mhm.
now, when I think about if I eat something and I don't feel good afterwards, like the 4 cookies and then feeling a little bit sick afterwards, it's now those thoughts, and it's nothing to do with my body, but it's more to do with how I treated myself.
Totally.
Not to say that there isn't a place where you, for emotional eating. I mean, emotional eating is completely normal, it's completely human and completely okay. But when we do something that is, you know, making us feel physically unwell or you know, whatever, I think it's a pretty, you know, it's a pretty amazing shift to kind of go from how this affects my body to more self-serving of like, this, I just don't like that I made that decision and now I
Mhm.
feel like this.
Yeah. And I think that that's when it turns from like a punishment thing to a learning experience.
Yeah.
And so something that I like to ask a lot of my clients is, you know, on, you know, Mondays I'll do their check-in, and I'll be like, you know, what went well this week? What do you feel didn't go well this week? What opportunities do you have? And they might, you know, maybe they'll say like, oh, well, you know, I went out to eat and I ate this and I felt terrible and blah, blah, blah. And, you know, and I chose this. And my question is always like, great. So what did you take out of that to use next for the next time?
Totally.
So like, and a lot of the time they're like, why are you telling me this was great? Like, this wasn't great. And I'm like, no, this actually was great, because this is an opportunity for you to understand, hey, this is how I acted in this situation. How do I want to act in the next time, in like the next situation that is similar to this? Um, and that is, I think, experience is the most powerful learning tool. But I think a lot of the time when we're sort of like riding that like white knuckle roller coaster of dieting, it's like you aren't letting yourself have the experience. And
But
so because you don't let yourself have that experience of like fucking up, I guess.
yeah.
I hope I can cuss on
Yeah.
this.
Yes.
Um, then and because you don't let yourself have that experience, it's almost like the fall seems like it would be greater. It's like because you won't let yourself eat the entire bag of potato chips and genuinely feel bad about it, or like feel physically bad, then it's like you have this fear of like, I eat the whole bag of potato chips and I'm going to gain 5 kilos. And it's like, that's not how science works.
Yeah. 100%. I totally agree with you with the experience piece, and what you said a little bit earlier about, you know, moving from judgment to curiosity, because when we're curious there is no place for judgment, because it's just like, this is interesting, rather than being like, I'm such an idiot, or being good or bad, right? And having that experience, it's all, this is what I say to my clients as well, this is brilliant. It's information, it's intel. So what are we going to do next time? This is beautiful. And it
Yeah.
takes the pressure off for sure. I completely agree. So Gillian, I don't want to take up any more of your time, but what I would like to ask you is, what are 3 things that you could offer advice for anybody listening or watching, to help them during the rest of their time if they are in lockdown and quarantine or whatever, and if they are kind of struggling with managing food? What are 3 things that you would suggest?
Okay. So I would say first is get curious.
Mm,
So take the time to get curious about what is going on with you.
yeah.
And so stop, like, and part of the curiosity piece is like before you pick up your fork or before you eat a snack, get curious about what's going on. Um, and I think that that is probably going to be the most powerful tool that's going to serve you moving forward. I think as far as more like a practical application thing, I would say that what would work the best is stop snacking, eat meals that fill you up, and eat like, 3 meals a day, maybe 4. But usually if you're eating enough food, 3 meals a day should be pretty good. Because the fact of the matter is that most of us aren't being as active as normal. And if you are curious about your hunger, you will notice that you're probably not as hungry. So 1 leads to 2. And then 3 would be, don't punish yourself over food, because that usually has the reverse effect. So like when you punish yourself and you're like, I can't eat that cookie, like you continuously think about the freaking cookie and you spend all day thinking about the cookie. And then guess what? 1, you've spent all day thinking about the cookie, and 2, you're probably going to go eat more cookies. So eat the thing, move on with your life.
Mm.
And then I guess, okay, one more. This is another practical application thing. Fill your plate with veggies.
Mm.
Like that's just like, find a way that you like to eat vegetables and eat a lot of them, because vegetables will offer you nutrients. They offer you fiber. They, especially if you are someone that's like, I don't want to get fat in quarantine, you're probably not going to get fat in quarantine, but they're also low calorie. And yeah, and eat veggies and eat fruit.
100%. I completely agree with everything that you said. I think that they're beautiful, beautiful tips. So thank you so much, Gillian. So just stay on with me, but we'll just wrap up. But thank you so much for your time today. I think that you've shared so many beautiful golden nuggets, and especially around how we can practice mindfulness, because I think one of the biggest things around mindfulness with food is mindfulness with food, and it's like, what does that actually mean and how do we actually do that? So the kind of things that you've shared I think are really important and really crucial, so thank you so much for that. And I hope that you take care over there and you're out in 10 days.
I hope so too.
Yeah. Awesome, Gillian. Thank